The first drawing came home folded inside a math worksheet, soft at the corners from rain and a little boy's backpack pressed against it all day. Lena almost threw it away with the grocery receipts piled beside the sink. She was too tired to notice small things anymore. Too tired to take her coat off before standing motionless beneath the weak kitchen light. Trying to remember whether she had enough money left for laundry this week. Then she saw the black shape drawn in heavy crayon near the bottom of the page. It was a man. Tall. Broad shoulders. Long dark coat standing beneath blue rain, beside a window colored warm yellow from inside. The face had no smile. No eyes either. Just shadow pressed so hard into the paper that the crayon had torn one corner slightly. Underneath the drawing, in Noah's uneven handwriting, was one sentence. The man who watches when the lights go out. Lena stared at the page for several seconds before slowly turning toward the apartment window beside the couch. Outside, rainwater crawled down the glass beneath the flickering streetlight across the road. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, pushing a toy ambulance slowly between two chair legs. 7 years old, thin shoulders beneath an oversized hoodie, already too small at the wrists. He looked up casually when he noticed her staring at the paper. That frightened her more than if he had looked nervous. She held up the drawing carefully and asked who it was. Noah barely hesitated. The man outside, he said. Lena felt the room tighten quietly around her. The refrigerator hummed beside the sink. Pipes knocked somewhere behind the apartment walls. A car hissed through rainwater below on the street. Ordinary sounds. Lena forced herself not to rush toward the curtains because children remembered panic too clearly. They stored it, carried it to bed. She asked what man outside, and Noah shrugged softly before returning to pushing the ambulance forward. The one who stands there sometimes, he said. Then he added, almost casually, that the man scared the bad ones away. Lena crossed the room and closed the curtains with both hands before realizing she was doing it too quickly. Noah watched her quietly from the floor. She forced herself to breathe slower. Children invented things. Imaginary people. Monsters in hallways. Shapes in windows during storms. That was normal. Especially in old apartment buildings where shadows stretched strangely through broken blinds and tired adults whispered too much after midnight. Still, something about the drawing stayed under her skin in a way she could not explain. Their apartment sat above a closed pharmacy and a laundromat with 3 missing letters in the sign downstairs. 4th floor. Cheap rent. Broken heater every winter. Thin walls. Lena worked double shifts at the diner, 6 blocks away, just to keep the lights on. Nobody watched people like them. Nobody had reason to. She was a single mother, with overdue bills taped beneath magnets on the refrigerator, and exactly $43 left until Friday. Dangerous men belonged to richer neighborhoods than this. But later that night, after Noah fell asleep on the couch with cartoons flickering silently against the walls, Lena unfolded the drawing again beneath the kitchen light. The details bothered her now. The coat looked specific. The posture, too. One hand near the ribs beneath the jacket. Like the man was holding something there, or hiding an injury. Beside him, Noah had drawn 2 yellow squares glowing behind the rain. Their apartment windows. Lena touched the crayon marks lightly with her thumb and felt how deeply they had been pressed into the paper. At 1:17 in the morning, something brushed softly against the hallway wall outside her apartment door. Lena froze immediately. Not footsteps exactly. More like fabric dragging briefly across peeling paint. She stood from the couch without making noise and stared toward the entrance while the apartment breathed quietly around her. The sound stopped. Her heart hammered once hard enough to hurt. Then silence returned so completely she could hear rain tapping the air conditioner outside the bedroom window. Lena moved carefully toward the kitchen drawer and wrapped trembling fingers around the small knife she kept beside old batteries and takeout menus. Another faint sound came from outside. A slow exhale. Lena stopped breathing altogether. Then Noah's sleepy voice drifted softly from behind her, telling her it was okay. She turned so quickly, her shoulders struck the wall. Noah stood near the hallway in dinosaur pajamas with one blanket dragging behind him. His hair stuck up unevenly from sleep. Lena whispered for him to go back to bed, though her voice sounded wrong even to herself. Noah rubbed one eye slowly and said the man wouldn't let them come in. Cold spread carefully through her stomach. She asked who, even though she already knew the answer waiting for her. The man I draw, Noah said quietly. By morning, Lena had almost convinced herself exhaustion was twisting ordinary things into fear. She walked Noah to school through gray rain beneath shared umbrellas and crowded sidewalks. Steam rose from subway grates. Delivery trucks blocked intersections. Construction workers smoked beneath scaffolding, while traffic lights reflected red across wet pavement. Normal city morning. Noah hugged her quickly outside the school gate before running inside with his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Lena watched until he disappeared through the doors. Then she reached into her coat pocket and touched the folded drawing again. At the diner, she poured coffee for men who barely looked at her face, refilled ketchup bottles, smiled automatically when customers called her sweetheart. The lunch rush came and went in waves of noise and greasy air beneath fluorescent lighting. By 2 in the afternoon, she had almost stopped thinking about the drawing completely. Then the school called. The teacher asked gently whether there was probably nothing to worry about, but explained that Noah had drawn something during art class that concerned them a little. Lena arrived at the school 20 minutes later with cold fear already building beneath her ribs. Noah sat quietly outside the principal's office, swinging his legs beneath the plastic chair. His teacher handed Lena another drawing without saying much. This one was larger, more detailed. The same tall man in the dark coat standing beneath the broken streetlight across from their apartment building. 3 black cars parked behind him along the curb. Noah had colored the windows completely black. Once they were alone in the hallway, Lena asked quietly whether he had seen those cars before. Noah nodded once. He said sometimes at night. When she asked why he hadn't told her, the boy looked confused by the question. Because he stays there when they come, he said. Lena crouched lower until they were eye level. Who stays there? She asked. The man, Noah answered. Children ran through the hallway behind them, laughing too loudly about something harmless. While Lena stared at her son's calm face, trying to understand whether she should feel relieved or terrified. She asked carefully whether this man had ever spoken to him. Noah hesitated just long enough to frighten her before saying a little. Lena's pulse jumped instantly. Last week, near the bus stop, Noah told her. She asked what the man had said, and Noah looked down at the drawing in his lap before explaining that the man had given him his bus card back. Lena felt the hallway tilt slightly around her. She repeated the word back to him slowly. Noah explained that it had fallen near the alley, and the man had picked it up before another guy did. Every instinct inside her tightened immediately. She asked why he had never told her. And Noah looked guilty as he said he thought she would be scared. That sentence hurt more than the rest somehow. Her 7-year-old son had started measuring how much fear she could carry before speaking. Lena sat beside him heavily in the plastic chair outside the office and whispered for him to tell her what the man had looked like up close. Noah considered the question seriously before saying one word. Sad. The answer caught her completely off guard. She repeated it back. And Noah said he had looked tired too. Like her after work, Lena looked away before he noticed what crossed her face. Somewhere down the hallway, a teacher laughed softly while lockers slammed shut between classes. Ordinary sounds. They suddenly felt very far away from her. She asked quietly whether the man had touched him. And Noah shook his head immediately, saying the man had stayed far away and never asked questions. When she pressed him for what the man had said exactly, Noah repeated the words carefully from memory. Go straight inside. Don't stop for anybody tonight. A cold feeling moved slowly through Lena's chest after that. That evening, she took a different route home. Longer streets, brighter intersections. Noah complained once that his backpack felt heavy, then fell quiet beside her. Halfway down their block, he suddenly stopped walking. His fingers tightened around hers. When Lena followed his gaze toward the opposite curb, she saw a black sedan sitting there with the engine running. The windows were tinted dark enough to hide everyone inside. Rainwater slid down the windshield in silver lines beneath the streetlight. Lena felt Noah move closer against her side instinctively. She kept walking without changing pace because fear smelled strongest when people stopped moving. As they reached the apartment entrance, the sedan slowly pulled away from the curb. No headlights, no hurry. It rolled past them close enough for Lena to see her own pale reflection in the glass. Then it disappeared around the corner. Noah kept watching after it was gone and said quietly that one wasn't the man's. Lena hurried them upstairs after that. Every hallway light seemed dimmer than usual. Every sound from neighboring apartments too sharp against the walls. She locked the apartment door immediately and shoved the chair beneath the handle before realizing Noah was staring at her silently from the kitchen entrance. She told him to go wash his hands, trying to steady her voice. And Noah obeyed without argument. Lena stood alone beside the sink, staring toward the curtained window while rain moved softly against the glass outside. Fear was one thing when it stayed inside the chest. It became humiliating when it reached the hands. She could barely open the soup can because her fingers would not stop shaking. After dinner, Lena checked every corner of the apartment for reasons she could not explain even to herself. On a biz, inside closets, behind the shower curtain. She inspected the lock 3 separate times while Noah sat quietly drawing at the coffee table beneath the lamp. The apartment felt too small suddenly, too exposed. She moved toward him slowly and asked what he was drawing this time. Noah turned the page toward her without hesitation. The same man again. Only this time he stood directly beneath their apartment window. And beside him, Noah had drawn 3 small figures near the street. Dark shapes, no faces. The man in the black coat stood between those figures and the building entrance. Lena stared at the picture silently until Noah pointed toward the page and said softly that the man always stood there when they came. The hallway lights outside flickered once. Both of them looked toward the door immediately. Then came footsteps from the stairwell below. Heavy. Multiple men, slowly moving upward floor by floor. The footsteps stopped somewhere below their floor. Lena stood motionless beside the coffee table, while Noah slowly lowered his crayon into his lap. The apartment seemed to shrink around the sound of men moving through the stairwell. One voice muttered something too low to understand. Another answered briefly, calm, organized. Not drunk neighbors coming home late. Lena reached for Noah immediately and pulled him behind her without thinking. The hallway light outside buzzed softly once more, before settling back into silence. Then someone knocked on a door downstairs. Not theirs. A woman opened it cautiously. Lena recognized Mrs. Alvarez's sharp voice almost immediately through the thin apartment walls as the old woman snapped at whoever stood there. A man answered politely enough to sound dangerous, saying he was sorry to bother her and that they were looking for someone. Lena felt Noah grip the back of her sweater tightly. The conversation below lasted only seconds longer before Mrs. Alvarez cursed at them loudly and slammed her door hard enough to shake the pipes. The men continued upward. Lena pushed Noah quietly toward the bedroom and whispered for him to go inside now. Noah obeyed immediately this time without questions. She shut the bedroom door halfway, then returned to the front entrance with the kitchen knife still cold against her palm. The footsteps reached the fourth-floor landing and stopped directly outside her apartment. Lena's breathing turned shallow instantly. Noah stood frozen in the bedroom doorway, watching her silently. 3 slow knocks touched the door. Not loud. Controlled. Lena did not answer. Another pause followed, and then a man's voice came through the wood, claiming to be maintenance and saying they needed access to the water lines. Her stomach tightened immediately. Maintenance never came after dark. Never sounded like that. She stayed silent while sweat gathered slowly against her back beneath the sweater. The voice continued calmly, telling her they knew someone was inside. Noah took one small, frightened breath behind her. Then another voice spoke from farther down the hallway. Lower. Familiar. Wrong door. The apartment fell completely still. Outside, someone muttered something sharp under his breath. Lena moved carefully toward the peephole and looked through it, just in time to see Adrian step out from the stairwell shadows beneath the bright hallway bulb. He wore the same dark coat from the drawings. Rain still wet along the shoulders. One hand rested near his ribs beneath the jacket exactly the way Noah always drew it. Up close, his face looked harder than she expected. Bruising near the jaw, sleepless eyes, exhaustion worn openly beneath danger. One of the men near her door straightened immediately and told him this didn't concern him. Adrian's expression did not change. It does tonight, he said. Something about the calmness in his voice shifted the hallway instantly. The second man glanced toward the stairwell uneasily. Lena realized then that these men feared Adrian more than they feared being caught outside her apartment. That terrified her in an entirely different way. Through the peephole, she watched one of them step closer to Adrian aggressively and tell him to move. Adrian did not move. The fight lasted less than 5 seconds. The aggressive man reached inside his jacket. Adrian caught his wrist immediately and slammed him hard against the wall beside Lena's apartment. Hard enough to crack plaster. The second man rushed forward instinctively. Adrian struck him once across the throat with brutal efficiency before shoving him backward into the hallway railing. No shouting. No wasted movement. Just controlled violence ending quickly and completely. Noah flinched behind her when the second man hit the floor. Adrian looked down at both men breathing hard near his feet. then spoke quietly enough that Lena almost missed it through the door, telling them they had been warned to stay away from the building. The first man coughed painfully against the wall and said Adrian was making things worse. Adrian crouched slightly near him. "No," he said calmly. "You coming near the kid is what made it worse." The word kid hollowed something inside Lena's chest. The men stared at Adrian with open hatred, now mixed carefully with fear. One of them spat blood onto the hallway carpet and asked whether he thought they would let this go. Adrian's eyes remained completely steady as he said he had stopped caring what they let go a long time ago. Then he grabbed both men roughly by their jackets and dragged them toward the stairwell without another word. Lena kept watching through the peephole until the hallway emptied again beneath the buzzing fluorescent light. Only then did she realize she was shaking badly enough to barely stand. Noah appeared beside her quietly and whispered that it was him. Unnecessarily. Lena turned toward him slowly and asked whether he had known Adrian was outside tonight. Noah looked down at the floor and said he had thought maybe. When she asked why he hadn't told her, Noah said it was because she already looked scared. That answer hit her harder than the sounds of the fight outside the door. Her child had begun studying her fear before speaking, measuring it, protecting her from parts of the truth he thought she could not survive. Lena locked every bolt again after the hallway finally went quiet. Then she checked the windows, then the bathroom, then the hallway once more through the peephole. Adrian was gone. The men were gone too. Only one dark blood smear remained near the cracked plaster beside the stairwell. Noah stood near the couch, watching her carefully while clutching the latest drawing against his chest. He asked softly what it meant that the man only came when bad people did. That sentence followed her through the entire night. By morning, exhaustion pressed against Lena's bones so heavily she almost called Noah in sick from school. But routine felt safer than fear somehow. Children still needed breakfast, backpacks, homework folders signed at kitchen tables. She walked him to school beneath gray skies and watched until he disappeared safely inside before finally turning toward the bus stop herself. Halfway there, she noticed the black SUV parked across the street immediately. Different from the sedan, bigger, darker windows, engine running. Lena kept walking, while every nerve inside her tightened painfully. The SUV rolled forward at the exact same speed she moved. Her pulse climbed instantly. She crossed the street without warning. The SUV crossed too. She stopped outside a convenience store, pretending to check her phone, while rainwater dripped from the edge of the awning overhead. The SUV idled half a block away now, waiting. Then the convenience store door opened behind her, and a voice told her not to stare at them too long. Lena spun immediately. Adrian stood beside the refrigerators near the back wall of the store with rain still clinging to his coat, up close in daylight. He looked even more tired than Noah had described. Not weak, worn down. The bruise along his jaw had darkened overnight, and one knuckle near his right hand remained split open beneath dried blood. The cashier behind the counter pretended not to notice either of them. Adrian glanced briefly toward the window and told her they would realize she had noticed them. Lena stared at him with disbelief, hardening quickly into anger, and asked who he was. Adrian ignored the question completely and told her to take her son somewhere crowded after school, not to go straight home. When she pushed back, his voice remained calm, but something sharper moved underneath it. He told her carefully that if a black SUV stayed behind her for more than 3 blocks, she needed to change direction immediately. Lena folded her arms tightly and said he didn't get to tell her how to live. Adrian finally looked directly at her, then, "You're being followed outside a convenience store at 9 in the morning," he said quietly. This stopped being normal already. The truth of it made her furious instantly. She asked if he had sent them. Something flickered briefly across his face. Disappointment, maybe. He told her evenly that if he had wanted her apartment opened, she wouldn't still have locks. The sentence landed cold and heavy between them. No performance inside it. Just fact. Lena hated how believable he sounded. Outside, the SUV remained parked in the rain. The passenger inside smoked slowly while watching the storefront through tinted glass. Lena lowered her voice instinctively and asked why they were following her family. Adrian glanced toward the SUV once before answering. He told her they thought her son's father had left something behind. Her stomach tightened immediately. She said her ex was dead. Adrian said he knew. She asked what that had to do with Noah. And Adrian remained silent for several seconds. Long enough to tell her the answer mattered. 6 years ago, he told her carefully, her ex had driven for men connected to a warehouse near the docks. Those men ran the kind of organization that didn't leave loose ends. One night, her ex had seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Lena stared at him blankly and asked what he was talking about. 3 men had been executed there. Adrian said, his voice staying low and controlled despite the horror inside the words. Her ex had escaped before they found him. Lena felt the air leave her lungs slowly. She shook her head. Adrian told her he had disappeared for 3 weeks after that. Then suddenly came back with cash he couldn't explain. Every memory she had tried to bury years ago shifted painfully awake inside her chest. The unexplained money, the fear, the late-night phone calls her ex used to take outside. She whispered that he had told her it was security work. Adrian nodded once. That's what they all say, he said. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, while Lena tried to understand how her life had quietly tilted into something unrecognizable. She asked what came next. And Adrian's eyes darkened slightly. He told her that the people connected to those killings now believed her ex had hidden proof somewhere before he died. She said she didn't have anything. He said he knew. She asked again why they were following her child. And Adrian looked toward the rain-covered window before answering, because desperate men stop caring who they hurt. He said. The simplicity of the sentence frightened her more than details would have. Outside, the passenger door of the SUV opened slowly. A man stepped onto the sidewalk. Adrian noticed immediately. Every part of him sharpened at once. He told her calmly to stay inside for 5 minutes after he left. Lena grabbed his sleeve before he could turn away. She asked quietly why he was helping them. Something moved behind his eyes then. Something quieter than violence. He told her that her son waited by the apartment window every night when she worked late. And that kids stopped doing that after enough disappointment. Lena let go of his sleeve slowly. Adrian stepped toward the exit. The man from the SUV was already approaching the storefront when Adrian pushed through the door into the rain. Lena moved instinctively toward the window despite his warning. Outside, the approaching man slowed immediately after seeing Adrian. Fear crossed his face fast enough to notice even through the glass. Adrian stopped directly in front of him beneath the gray morning sky. The 2 men exchanged several quiet words Lena could not hear through traffic and rain. Then the stranger glanced toward the convenience store window. Toward her, Adrian grabbed the front of the man's jacket instantly and slammed him against the SUV hard enough to shake the entire vehicle. People on the sidewalk turned briefly before looking away again. The city taught survival through selective blindness. Adrian leaned close to the man, speaking quietly near his ear, while rainwater rolled from both their coats. Whatever he said drained the color from the stranger's face almost immediately. Then Adrian released him with one hard shove. The SUV pulled away less than 30 seconds later. Adrian never looked back toward the store after that. He simply walked into the rain with one hand near his ribs and disappeared beyond the intersection while traffic swallowed him completely. Lena remained frozen beside the convenience store window long after he vanished. Her reflection stared back at her faintly through the glass. Palefazzi. Exhausted eyes. Fear sitting openly beneath both now. Danger made sense to her. Protection did not. That was the part beginning to pull her deeper in. For the next 3 days, nothing happened openly. No black sedans waited outside the school. No messages arrived on Lena's phone. No men knocked on doors pretending to be maintenance. The silence should have calmed her. Instead, it settled over the apartment like something watching patiently from another room. She still checked every parked vehicle before walking Noah home. Still avoided empty sidewalks after dark. Still woke 3 or 4 times each night to look through the curtains toward the broken streetlight across the street. Sometimes Adrian stood there. Sometimes he didn't. The nights he disappeared entirely were worse. At the diner, Lena started making mistakes she normally never made. Wrong orders, burned coffee, forgotten checks. Her manager finally cornered her near the kitchen freezer during the dinner rush while plates rattled and cooks shouted behind swinging doors. He asked quietly whether she was sick. Lena forced herself to keep wiping down trays without stopping and told him she was fine. He softened slightly after telling her she looked like hell and said she could take a couple days if she needed. Days off belonged to people with savings accounts, people whose rent didn't depend on every shift. Lena repeated that she was okay automatically. Her manager studied her face for another second before lowering his voice and asking whether somebody was bothering her. Lena froze briefly with a coffee pot still warm in her hand. He told her quietly that a couple nights ago he had seen a black SUV outside when they closed, and that it had sat there until she left. Fear slid coldly beneath her ribs again. She suggested it was probably waiting for someone else. Her manager didn't look convinced. That night, Noah stayed unusually quiet during dinner. He sat beneath the kitchen lamp drawing while Lena reheated canned soup beside the stove. Rain tapped softly against the apartment windows again. It felt like rain had followed them for weeks now. She asked carefully how school had been, and Noah shrugged before saying it was okay. Lena watched him for a moment before walking around the table slowly and asking what he was drawing this time. Noah hesitated before turning the page toward her. Adrian again. Only now he stood inside the apartment, near Noah's bedroom door. Blood darkened one side of his coat sleeve while his hand pressed against the wall beside him. Lena felt her stomach tighten immediately and asked quietly why Noah had drawn this. Noah studied the picture and said it was because the man had gotten hurt. When she asked how he knew that, he said he had dreamed it. Lena stared at the drawing longer than she meant to. The details looked too specific. The blood near the ribs, the tired posture, even the hallway lamp behind him looked accurate. She asked slowly whether Adrian had ever been inside their apartment. Noah shook his head immediately and promised he hadn't. She asked why the picture then, and he looked down at the paper carefully before saying it was because the man had looked tired last time. Lena leaned against the counter trying to steady herself. Children imagined things. They absorbed fear from adults and rebuilt it into dreams. That was normal. But Noah kept drawing Adrian less like a monster and more like someone carrying weight. Nobody else noticed. Noah said quietly, without looking up, that she still thought the man was bad. Lena folded her arms tightly and said she thought dangerous people stayed dangerous. Noah considered that for a moment. Sometimes dangerous people stop worse people. He said. The sentence sat heavily in the apartment between them. Before Lena could answer, 3 heavy knocks hit the apartment door. Both of them froze immediately. Not neighbor knocks. Not Mrs. Alvarez asking for sugar. These were controlled. Deliberate. Lena moved in front of Noah automatically while staring toward the entrance. Another knock followed. Harder this time. She called out, asking who it was. Silence answered first. Then a calm male voice through the woods said it was building maintenance and that they needed to check the water lines. Lena's pulse jumped instantly. Maintenance never came after 7. Noah grabbed the back of her sweater quietly. The voice continued politely, saying they knew someone was inside. Then another voice spoke from farther down the hallway. Lower. Familiar. Wrong apartment. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Adrian. Outside. Movement shifted immediately. One of the men near the door muttered something sharp beneath his breath. Adrian answered too quietly for her to hear. Then came a violent impact against the hallway wall, hard enough to shake the picture frame beside the kitchen. Noah flinched behind her. Another crash followed almost immediately. A body hitting the floor. Heavy breathing. One man cursed loudly before choking on the sound halfway through. The fight ended too fast. That frightened Lena more than if it had lasted longer. No chaos. No screaming. Just controlled violence, finishing quickly and efficiently outside her apartment door. Then silence returned. After several seconds, one softer knock touched the wood, and Adrian said calmly from the hallway not to open it. Lena approached the peephole slowly. Adrian stood alone outside, beneath the bright hallway bulb, with blood soaking through one side of his shirt near the ribs, exactly the way Noah had drawn earlier. At his feet, one man lay unconscious against the wall. Another crouched near the stairwell, holding his arm awkwardly. Adrian noticed the movement at the peephole immediately and said they would send more people now. Lena unlocked the chain halfway before stopping herself. She asked who they were. Adrian glanced toward the stairwell briefly before answering that they were men looking for something they thought her ex had left behind. She told him again that she didn't have anything, and he said he knew. She asked why they wouldn't leave them alone. And Adrian's eyes darkened slightly beneath the hallway light. Because fear makes men stupid, he said. Lena stared at the blood running slowly from his side onto the carpet and told him he was one of them too. Adrian did not deny it. He said he had been. She told him that wasn't comforting. And a tired breath escaped through his nose, almost like amusement, before disappearing again. He said it wasn't meant to be. Noah stepped closer behind Lena carefully. Adrian noticed immediately and straightened slightly despite the pain clearly pulling through one side of his body. Noah whispered that the man was bleeding again. Adrian said he had had worse. Noah told him the shirt was ruined. For one brief second, something softer almost touched Adrian's expression before vanishing beneath exhaustion again. Then footsteps echoed faintly from the lower stairwell. Adrian's attention snapped toward the sound instantly. The dangerous calm returned to him so fast, it almost felt frightening to watch. He told her quietly to lock the door after him. Lena grabbed the edge of the frame before he could turn away. She told him to wait. Adrian looked back once. She asked why he was really doing this. The hallway stayed silent around them except for the fluorescent buzz overhead. Adrian glanced briefly toward Noah standing behind her before answering. The first night he had seen her son. He said quietly. Noah had been sitting alone on the apartment stairs, waiting for her after work. Lena felt something tighten painfully in her throat. Adrian's voice remained steady. 3 men had walked past arguing about money. He told her. Her son had moved his backpack so they wouldn't trip over it. Noah lowered his eyes toward the floor shyly. Adrian looked at him carefully. Kids around here usually learn fear before kindness. He said. The sentence stayed with Lena long after Adrian disappeared down the stairwell, dragging the injured man behind him. She locked every bolt immediately afterward and stood motionless beside the door, listening until the building finally fell quiet again. Noah sat on the couch, clutching his drawing pad silently, while Lena cleaned blood smears from the hallway side edge of the door with shaking hands. Later that night, around 2 in the morning, she found Noah awake, staring at the ceiling instead of sleeping. She sat carefully beside him and whispered that he should be asleep. Noah nodded once, then shook his head. She asked what was wrong, and he said quietly that he was afraid they would come back. Lena brushed hair slowly from his forehead and told him they wouldn't tonight. He asked if that was because Adrian was outside, and she hesitated too long. No one noticed immediately. Children always noticed hesitation first. He murmured sleepily that she trusted the man a little now. Lena looked toward the dark window beside the bed. Somewhere beyond it, rain moved softly through the city streets again. She said quietly that she trusted he was trying to keep Noah safe. Noah said that was different. She whispered that yes, it was. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Noah asked the question she had feared most. He asked whether his dad had been a bad person. Lena closed her eyes briefly before saying his dad had made mistakes. Noah asked if they were big ones, and the apartment felt painfully quiet around them as she said they were big enough that dangerous people still remembered him. Noah absorbed that slowly while staring toward the ceiling. Then he asked whether that was why Adrian looked sad all the time. Lena blinked slightly at the question. Not expecting it, Noah shrugged beneath the blanket and said it was because the man remembered things too. The next morning, Lena quit the diner. Not dramatically. No speech. No tears in the kitchen. She simply called her manager from the apartment while Noah watched cartoons beside packed duffel bags on the floor. She told him she needed time. Her manager sighed heavily and asked if it was about the SUV. Lena looked toward the curtained window instinctively and said she couldn't do this right now. He softened and asked if she was in trouble. She swallowed hard enough to hurt and said she thought trouble had already found her. After she hung up, she started packing faster. Essential things only. Noah's clothes. Medicine. School papers. The small stuffed dinosaur he still slept with when nightmares got bad. Noah asked softly from the couch whether they were leaving. Lena zipped one duffel shut and said, maybe for a little while. He asked where, and the question hollowed her out immediately because she had no answer. No family nearby. No safe apartment waiting somewhere warmer. Just fear packed inside cheap bags beside the couch. At noon, someone knocked gently at the door. Lena froze instantly. Noah muted the television without being asked. Another softer knock followed. Lena checked the peephole carefully before exhaling in relief. Mrs. Alvarez stood outside holding a casserole dish against her chest. Lena opened the door quickly. The old woman stepped inside immediately, without waiting for invitation, and said quietly that they should leave before dark. Lena's stomach tightened as she asked why. Mrs. Alvarez set the casserole carefully onto the counter with trembling hands and told her that two men had come asking questions downstairs that morning. Lena asked if they were the same ones. The old woman shook her head. Fear returned instantly. She asked what they had wanted to know. And Mrs. Alvarez hesitated before saying they had asked whether a little boy lived on the 4th floor. Noah lowered his eyes toward the couch cushions silently. Mrs. Alvarez glanced toward him with surprising softness before turning back toward Lena. She said the man in black had come earlier too. Lena looked up immediately and asked if it was Adrian. The old woman nodded. He had checked the alley behind the building. She said, "Then the roof access." Lena asked why. And Mrs. Alvarez hesitated before answering quietly that it was because he was expecting company that night. The apartment suddenly felt colder after that. Real fear now. Structured fear. The kind that arrived with instructions because someone already understood exactly how violence entered buildings. Mrs. Alvarez touched Lena's arm gently before leaving. She whispered that the man outside was the only reason those people hadn't reached her boy already. Then she disappeared back into the hallway while rain tapped softly against the apartment windows. By evening, the building itself felt wrong. Too quiet. Too watchful. Lena finished packing while Noah sat cross-legged beside the duffel bags, drawing silently again beneath the lamp. The hallway noises had changed. Fewer televisions. Fewer footsteps. Like neighbors, sensed danger, moving nearby even without understanding it. At 8:17, the hallway lights flickered once overhead. Both Lena and Noah looked up immediately. Then came shouting from downstairs. Fast footsteps thundered through the stairwell. Multiple men. Someone screamed. The hallway lights died completely. Darkness swallowed the apartment instantly. Noah whispered sharply for his mother. Lena grabbed him immediately and pulled him toward the bathroom while heavy footsteps crashed upward floor by floor outside. Another scream echoed through the building, followed by a violent impact against metal railings. Men shouted downstairs. Something broke loudly. Lena locked the bathroom door behind them and dropped beside the bathtub with Noah crushed tightly against her chest while both of them listened to violence climb toward the 4th floor. Then Adrian's voice cut through the hallway outside. Calm. Controlled. Terrifyingly steady. "You picked the wrong building," he said. A gunshot exploded seconds later. The sound hit the apartment walls hard enough to shake dust from the bathroom ceiling. Noah buried his face against Lena's shoulder immediately, while another violent crash erupted somewhere near the stairwell outside. Men shouted over each other. Furniture splintered. Something heavy slammed against the 4th floor railing with enough force to rattle pipes inside the walls. Lena wrapped both arms around Noah while pressing herself against the bathtub. Then 3 more men came through the stairwell above. Cutting off the exit Adrian had planned, his voice changed for the first time. Not panic, but strain. Something forced and honest underneath it when he shouted for everyone to stay back. Lena heard it then. That fraction of a second where the weight was too much even for him. 2 impacts hit the wall close together. He recovered fast. But he had hesitated. And she heard it. And somehow, that made him more real than anything else that night. Adrian's voice, came again. Closer this time, telling them to stay down. Another gunshot cracked through the hallway. A man screamed once before the sound cut off abruptly. The fight moved past their apartment door, toward the stairwell again. Fast footsteps. Bodies hitting walls. The unmistakable sound of controlled violence traveling through tight spaces. Noah trembled beneath Lena's arms while she stared at the bathroom lock. Smoke drifted faintly beneath the crack near the floor. Somewhere below, police sirens began rising through the wet city streets. Then silence. Sudden, complete. Only Lena's breathing remained loud inside the bathroom now. Slow footsteps approached the apartment entrance outside. One set, no rushing, no panic. 3 soft knocks touched the damaged front door. Adrian's voice sounded rougher now. Lower. As he said it was him and that they had to leave right now. She stayed frozen. She asked how she knew it was really him. And silence answered first. Then Adrian spoke again quietly through the apartment. Because your son draws my coat too long, he said. Noah lifted his head instantly against her shoulder and whispered that it was true. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Of all possible answers, only someone who had studied those drawings carefully would know that. She unlocked the bathroom door with trembling fingers. The apartment beyond looked half destroyed beneath flashing red and blue police lights, bleeding faintly through the curtains. One kitchen chair lay shattered near the entrance. Their front door hung crooked on broken hinges. Adrian stood beside it, breathing hard with blood running steadily down one hand and soaking through his shirt near the ribs. 2 men lay unconscious in the hallway behind him near the stairwell. Noah moved toward him first before Lena could stop him. Adrian immediately straightened, despite obvious pain, and muttered softly for the boy to be careful near the blood. The apartment smelled like smoke, rainwater, and iron. Lena stared toward the hallway beyond the broken door and asked where the others were. Adrian glanced briefly toward the stairs and said they were gone. She asked, gone where? And his eyes shifted back toward her as he said some had been carried out and some had carried themselves. The calmness in his voice chilled her more than anger would have. Lena grabbed the duffel bags quickly from beside the couch and said they were calling the police. Adrian shook his head immediately. She pushed back, and he told her they needed to leave before the building got locked down. She reminded him there had been gunshots, and he said that was exactly why they were leaving now. His voice remained controlled, but she could hear strain underneath it finally. Real exhaustion. Blood dripped slowly from one hand onto the apartment floor between them. She snapped at him that he had said he could fix this. He said he was fixing it. She asked whether that meant dragging them deeper into whatever this was. Adrian looked at her for a long second beneath the flashing police lights outside the curtains and said she had already been inside it before he found her. The sentence landed hard because she knew he was right. Noah stood silently near the couch, clutching his backpack against his chest, while the apartment breathed around them in broken silence. Somewhere downstairs, officers shouted instructions through the lobby. Adrian said quietly that there was a car behind the laundromat and that they had maybe 2 minutes. Lena stared at him standing inside the ruined apartment. Bloodied. Dangerous. Still entirely focused on getting her child out alive. She whispered suddenly, asking why them. Adrian paused and looked back at her. She said it again, her voice cracking slightly this time from exhaustion more than emotion. She said he could have walked away days ago. Adrian looked briefly toward Noah before answering. The first night he had seen her son. he said quietly. Noah had sat on the apartment steps waiting for her until almost 3 in the morning. Lena felt something painful tighten beneath her ribs immediately. Adrian's eyes stayed on Noah. Every time headlights turned the corner, he said, "He thought it was you." Noah lowered his gaze silently toward the floor. Adrian continued carefully. Most kids stopped waiting after enough disappointment. Her son hadn't. The apartment stayed quiet around them except for distant sirens and rain against the windows. Lena suddenly understood something she had been refusing to see clearly. Adrian did not keep returning because of evidence anymore, or debts, or unfinished business. Somewhere between the drawings and the hallway fights and the small apartment light above Noah's head, protecting them had become personal. A police radio crackled loudly from downstairs. Adrian's posture sharpened instantly again. "We're out of time," he said. This time Lena nodded. Not because she trusted him completely, because every dangerous thing tonight had stopped at the edge of her child because Adrian stood in front of it first. They left through the back stairs while police flooded the main lobby below. Adrian moved ahead despite the injury slowing one side of his body slightly now. Every few seconds he paused to listen before continuing downward. The building felt hollow around them, stripped of ordinary life. Somewhere above, a baby cried through apartment walls while emergency lights flashed faintly across the stairwell windows. When they reached the alley behind the laundromat, cold, rain-heavy air hit them immediately. A dark SUV waited beside overflowing trash bins with the engine running softly. Lena stopped walking. Adrian noticed instantly and said it was his. She said that didn't help. Something faint almost touched the corner of his mouth before disappearing again. He said fair, and opened the back door for Noah first. The child climbed inside without hesitation. Lena watched Adrian carefully while he scanned the alley one final time before entering the driver's seat. Even wounded, he carried himself like a man expecting violence every second he remained still. The city drifted past outside through wet reflections and empty intersections, while nobody spoke for several minutes. Noah eventually fell asleep against the window, clutching his backpack tightly to his chest. Lena sat beside him in silence, listening to the low hum of tires moving across rain-dark streets. Adrian drove one-handed because the other remained pressed against his ribs beneath the coat where blood still darkened the fabric. Lena finally said he needed a hospital. He said no. She told him he was bleeding through the seat. He said again that he had had worse. The answer came too quickly, too practiced. Lena studied his face in the passing streetlights, pale now beneath the bruising and exhaustion. She told him he could barely breathe normally. Adrian kept his eyes on the road and said that if he stopped moving tonight, people would catch up. The honesty inside that sentence settled heavily through the SUV. Lena looked toward Noah, sleeping quietly beside her, and asked, "What came after tonight?" Adrian's grip tightened slightly against the wheel. "After tonight," he said, "they would understand that her son was not available to be used as leverage anymore." The wording made her stomach twist. She repeated the word available back to him slowly. He glanced toward the mirror briefly before explaining that men like that didn't see families. They saw pressure points. Rain slid slowly across the windshield beneath passing traffic lights. Lena looked out the side window because anger suddenly felt safer than fear again. She said he talked like he wasn't one of them. Silence stretched between them for several seconds. Then Adrian said quietly that maybe he was tired of being one. The city lights moved across his face in cold blue flashes while he drove deeper into unfamiliar streets near the river. Eventually, The SUV disappeared into the underground garage of an older apartment building, smaller than Lena expected. Quiet. Concrete pillars stained dark with age. Adrian parked near the back corner and shut off the engine. For a moment, nobody moved. The metal ticking beneath the hood sounded strangely loud inside the silence. Then Adrian reached slowly into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper stained faintly with blood. Noah's drawing. He unfolded it carefully beneath the dim garage light. The picture showed Adrian standing outside the apartment again beneath the broken streetlight, but this time Noah had drawn something new beside him. A warm yellow square with curtains open. Home. Adrian stared at the drawing longer than Lena expected. He always colors the light too warm. He murmured quietly. Something inside her shifted, hearing that small, careful, but real. Adrian folded the drawing again with surprising gentleness before sliding it back inside his coat pocket near his chest. The apartment upstairs surprised Lena immediately. No luxury, no guards, just a quiet two-room place with half-dead plants near the window and a couch that looked like nobody slept properly on it. Noah drifted toward the folded blanket resting at one end without even asking permission. Adrian locked the door behind them, then suddenly grabbed the kitchen counter hard enough to make Lena move instinctively toward him. Blood hit the floor near his shoe in slow, dark drops. She told him immediately to sit down. He said he was fine. She told him he had left a trail through the hallway. Adrian looked toward Noah first before lowering himself carefully into the chair beside the kitchen table. That detail stayed with Lena longer than the blood did. She found a first aid kit beneath the sink while Noah curled sleepily beneath the blanket on the couch nearby. The apartment remained quiet except for distant rain against the windows, and Adrian's controlled breathing growing rougher each minute. Lena cleaned the wound beneath the kitchen light while Adrian sat still with one hand gripping the edge of the chair. She muttered that this should have had stitches hours ago. He said he knew. She asked why he hadn't gone. And Adrian looked toward the sleeping child on the couch before answering, "I was outside your building," he said. The answer landed softly, but harder than most things he said. Lena wrapped fresh bandages carefully around his ribs while studying him for the first time, without immediate panic, drowning everything else. Beneath the bruises and danger and exhaustion, Adrian looked profoundly alone. Not weak. Never weak. Just worn down by years of staying alert long enough that rest itself probably felt dangerous now. She said quietly that he could have walked away from them. Adrian remained silent for several seconds. Then he said finally that he had tried once. Lena looked up and asked what had happened. His eyes shifted toward Noah, sleeping beneath the blanket. "Your son waited at the apartment window until 3 in the morning, he said. The room stayed quiet after that. Lena finished securing the bandage, while warm kitchen light spilled softly across the apartment walls. Outside, the storm finally began easing over the city. Noah shifted slightly in his sleep, and the blanket slipped from one shoulder. Adrian noticed immediately and stood before Lena could move. He walked slowly to the couch because of the injury, then carefully pulled the blanket back around the sleeping boy. Noah barely stirred. Adrian remained there one extra second, looking down at him with something on his face Lena had never seen before. Something careful, protective enough to ache. Then he stepped back automatically toward the shadows again, like he did not belong near soft things too long. Lena watched him quietly from the kitchen. She said his name softly and told him he could sit down. He looked toward her uncertainly for the first time since she had met him. Slowly, he lowered himself into the armchair beside the couch instead of returning to the window. The lamp beside them cast warm light across Noah's sleeping face while rain softened faintly outside near the river. After several minutes, Lena stood and walked toward the apartment door. Adrian's posture sharpened instantly. He asked what she was doing. She looked down at the heavy locks, the chains, the reinforced deadbolt, then back at him, very quietly. Lena unlocked the door and left it that way. Adrian stared at her for a moment without speaking. The apartment remained silent except for the fading storm outside. Then Noah murmured sleepily beneath the blanket without opening his eyes. "Told you he stays," he said. Maybe that's what frightened the people hunting them most in the end. Not that a dangerous man knew violence. Men like Adrian were built inside violence long before they learned gentleness. The frightening thing was that somewhere between a little boy's drawings and a fourth-floor apartment light left on too late at night, he finally chose someone to protect instead. And somewhere tonight, another exhausted child is probably still standing near a window, waiting for footsteps to come home safely.